Okay, good evening. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. This is the first meeting of the City of Cotulla Charter Commission. This is a commission that was approved by the City Council. There are going to be 7 members of the commission. 2 will be alternates. I have not heard from the mayor who the alternates are, so my recommendation is not, since we don't have all 7 here, that you 3 for sure are going to be voting members because you showed up. And then I think when we have a full quorum or full panel here, y'all can elect who the alternates are. Maybe somebody will volunteer to just be the alternate. Why we have alternates, I don't know, but that's the way the thing is set up. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Pena. I have been the city attorney here for about 20 years in the city of Cotulla. I'm a native, went to high school here, graduated in 1979, and the family has lived here for many, many years. This is a process that the way that it's set up under the law is that it is a commission that is basically comprised of citizens. The city council itself has no authority to actually prepare a charter for submission to the voters to either accept it or reject it. And it is an up or down, yes or no vote on the charter. The idea is that home rule is the most the most, I guess, the highest level, I guess, of municipal governance, because it allows the city to basically rule itself, subject to the limitations that are imposed upon it by law. The city of Cotulla, it currently is a what we call a Type A general law municipality. That may mean something to some of you. It may not mean anything to some of you. But a Type A general law municipality is comprised of 5 members of the city council, and then you have a mayor. So there's 6 people altogether. The city of Cotulla has a place system that it enacted. Each member of the council serves for 2 years, and the mayor serves for 2 years as well. There's no limitations on how many times they can be elected. The city of Cotulla has functioned in that manner, as far as I know, since it was incorporated, although I don't know for sure whether that may have been changed prior to my coming to the city. I know, for example, I've seen zoning maps in City Hall dated in the early 60s that had the same number of council members, and I'm sure it's probably always been a Type A or a whatever it was called before it was called a Type A. And that has worked well for the city. Every year, the first weekend in May, you have an election, and there are always 3 people up for election. So you'll either have 3 council members, or you'll have 2 council members and the mayor that are elected. If you ended up with somebody on the city council that you thought was a bad decision, you're not going to have him or her for longer than 2 years, and you'll have an opportunity to vote yes or no on the individual. With the home rule process, you can actually have a longer term, up to 3 years, and with that, you achieve some advantages. You also give up some things to have the ability to vote them out if you believe that they shouldn't be there or are not doing what they ought to be doing. The city of Cotulla has functioned very well under its existing form of government, And you, as the commission, will put together a document which will be submitted to the city council sometime in the end of January, early February. And the council has no input on what goes into that charter, okay? But it's submitted to them to either approve it and approve the recommendation and order an election, or reject it. It can't say, we don't like this, so we're going to put something else in it, we're going to change it here and there. They either take it or they reject it. And if they reject it, they can do any of a number of things. They can say, thank you for your service, we're going to form a new commission. They can say, go back to the drawing board, come back with something different. Or they can just outright reject it and decide they won't go forward with it. So I put a presentation here tonight, but before we get started, we do have a quorum. I'm not the chairman here, but we do need to swear in the commission members who are here. So have you already done that, Bianca? No. Okay, so let's get that done. So, as commission members, you have more than merely advisory powers, and as such, you are an appointed officer, at least for this limited purpose. So I've asked the city secretary to have each of you take an oath of office. Now, once the commission is dissolved, then you're done. But you actually are considered to be an officer, municipal officer, at least for the limited purposes of the Charter Commission. So I'll ask her to do the honors here.
Okay, doing them all together?
Yes.
Do y'all want cheat sheets?
Do we need them?
No, I mean,
What I think?
it's what you're gonna say.
No.
So state law says you have to take the anti-bribery oath first,
Yeah, they're in order, so
and then you take the oath of office. And it has to be in that order. And that is the same oath that the council takes, that every police officer, and that every appointed official in the state takes that same exact oath.
So if you want.
Stand up.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Noel Rodriguez,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I have not directly or indirectly paid,
that I have not directly or indirectly paid,
offered, promised to pay, contributed,
offered, promised to pay, contributed,
or promised to contribute any money or thing of value,
or promised to contribute any money or thing of value,
or promised any public office or employment
or promised any public office or employment,
for the giving or withholding of a vote
for the giving or withholding of a vote
at the election at which I was elected,
at the election at which I was elected,
or as a reward to secure my appointment or confirmation,
or as a reward to secure my appointment or confirmation,
whichever the case may be,
whichever the case may be,
so help me God.
so help me God.
The next one. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Noel Rodriguez,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of City of Cotulla Charter Commission
Of
of the office of the City of Cotulla Charter Commission
of the state of Texas,
of the State of Texas,
and will do the best of my ability
and will do the best of my ability
to preserve, protect,
to
and
preserve,
defend the
protect,
constitutions and laws
and defend the constitutions and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state, so help me God.
and of the state, so help me God.
Okay, so you're official now. The next item on the agenda is to elect a chairman and a vice chairman. We don't necessarily have to do that tonight. If you guys want to wait till the next meeting when there may be more people here, or you can do it tonight. You have a quorum, so it's up to you. If I don't hear from anybody, I guess we'll just move on, and then you can think about it. Bianca has the list of individuals who will be on the commission, 3 of them who are here tonight. There are a few that are missing. The former mayor, Pablo Gonzalez, I'm not sure whether he's going to do it or not. Raul Rodriguez, Juan Moreno Jr., and I have suggested the name of Raymond Ramirez, but it's up to the mayor to decide who he wants to appoint. I think all of those individuals would be very good charter members. They're citizens and people who have a commitment to the community. So hearing nothing, I guess we'll just move on, and I'm going to show you a PowerPoint here, and I'm going to have Juan cue it up for us. Do we need to cut the lights?
You guys didn't turn that up,
No. Okay, do you have it on there?
sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did.
Oh, that you were bringing your laptop so you can go to the projector.
Okay. You know what? I don't need to do that. You have it in front of you.
Yep.
So we printed it out. So we have a couple of council members here tonight. I'm going to give them copies. So you can follow along. Larry, this is just a basic overview of city charters. Under Texas law, the local government code sets up several different types of what we call municipal corporations. And the corporation name may seem strange for those who are not associated with cities, but it actually isn't a corporation. So the city does not have shareholders, doesn't pay a dividend, but it is a entity that exists aside and apart from its actual individual members of the corporation. So it has a perpetual life, a perpetual existence, and the rules for the operation of the city are enshrined in the local government code, the government code, and in other places in Texas law. So if you look around the state, all major cities that I'm aware of are home rule. For sure, the ones that you're thinking about, Laredo, San Antonio, Houston, El Paso, Dallas, Austin, but some smaller cities as well. City of Hondo has a charter that they've had for about 15 years now. The city of Pearsall has one. I believe the city of Pleasanton has one. And there are probably many other cities that are ruled by a charter. All a charter is another way of saying a constitution. So it's basically the governing document by which the organization of the municipal government is made. So it has typical things in there that you might expect. Sets up the ability to create departments, defines the role of the city council, the mayor. It can have provisions in there about the ability to issue franchises. And when I say a franchise, for example, a public utility, the city of Cotulla is fortunate, as are many of the older cities in the state, that it owns all of its utilities.
No.
Or which ones do we not own? I'm sorry, electric. But there are cities that own their electric utility. So we have water, gas, we have solid waste, and sewer. And those give the city a source of revenue, gives the city the ability to set the prices in conformance with what the citizens want. And the citizens have the ability to elect the officials who set those rates. The city has done a very good job in the last 20 years in really upgrading the infrastructure within the city, which all of you know. The roads here 15 years ago were impassable, many of them. And now you see roads that are really nice roads. You see, we've added many water wells to the city. I believe we have, what, 8 or 9 of them now?
We have 4 active wells, 5 active wells.
Okay, 5. Well, I was thinking we had more, but I think at one time we had 1 or 2. You know, we own the gas utility. For example, now the city has not been a stranger to the impact of the war in Ukraine, which has caused gas prices to go through the roof, and ours as well. But the city's been able to shield some of the residential customers from all of that, even though that may be changing. There are things that the city's able to do to make life more livable, to take care of the less fortunate, and to protect the vulnerable, which is really the role of government, and to make the city a pleasant and affordable place to live for its residents. But anyway, getting back to what we're talking about, with the home rule, if it's approved, and it has to be approved by the voters, the city has the ability to create a government that suits its needs. And it can change that at any time by amending its charter. Again, you go through a vote process, but once this is enshrined, if it gets approved, then you have the ability to go back and make changes. There's something called a charter review commission that in the draft charter gives the city the ability to appoint a charter review commission. Even if that wasn't in there, they would have the right to do it. And some cities put a timeline every 10 years, every 5 years, whatever. I've seen charters that I don't think they've ever been touched. They've been in place for 80 years. They got really crazy things in there. They call their city secretary the city clerk. That's a dead giveaway. In fact, in San Antonio, I think they still call him that, city clerk. That the city secretary is the more modern term for basically the city clerk, but it sounds to me it sounds better. Anyway, so if you look around the state, and you actually can go to the TML website and look at their directory of cities, and you'll see the form of government for each one of them. They're all in there. Anyway, moving on to page number 3 of the PowerPoint. Very similar to what I said. As cities grow, they consider and often choose to become home rule. As its name suggests, home rule allows municipalities the greatest latitude to tailor their chosen form of local government to public desires. And a city charter may contain whatever lawful provisions its citizens desire, as long as they're not contrary to state law, the state constitution, Voting Rights Act, federal constitution, federal law. General law, which is what we are now, has to find somewhere in either the state constitution or the local government code or some other code that allows it to do the things that it does. For example, the creation of a police department, the creation of a reserve police department, fire departments, all of those kinds of things, contracting authority, stuff that cities do day in and day out. Now, home rule cities don't have to find the specific provision in the law in order for them to do something. But if the law says you can't do something, then they are prohibited. So if a city enacted an ordinance, for example, that, increase the speed limit on city streets to, 100 miles an hour, is that lawful? I don't know. I mean, somebody would probably challenge that. But certainly they couldn't do it on a state highway or on a federal highway. But if you look down at the bottom, and that's kind of a crazy example, but the city charter, for example, we couldn't legalize the sale of marijuana in the city of Cotulla, or authorize the city to open a casino and pay for it, because that violates provisions of the law that says you can't do that yet. Many cities around the country do those things. Hopefully, that may not be coming anytime soon. I don't know. Go on to page number 5. We talked about general law, mayor, 5 council members. You can actually have 6 council members if you do a ward system. City of Savannah does that. I never could figure out why they had 6 council members, and then I realized what they had done, and they'd always done that, and they're a general law A. Vacancies, typically under the local government code, if somebody resigns or dies, the council appoints the person that they choose to appoint to the city council. If they've got longer than a year, then they actually have to stand for election after that period of time between the year and the 2 years. We've never done that here. The council doesn't even have to appoint. So you could have 5 members and 2 of them die, and you could still have 3 members and you're fine. You know, Casterville many years ago had an issue where I think the mayor, somehow they ended up without a mayor, and the mayor pro tem became the mayor. Well, the mayor pro tem still gets the vote, and they would never appoint a mayor. You know, so I mean, there are funny games you can play, you know, under the current system. They're perfectly legal. If the council says, you know what, we've got 5 members of the council and 1 died, and we like it better with 4, there's really not anything you can do about it until that person's term would come up. So in the draft charter, when you guys have a chance to take a look at it, it'll have some provisions in there on how you do it, and it basically tracks along with the system that you have now. It depends on the amount of time that they have left, and how you go about filling. For example, what I've always seen is council members just pick somebody, but you could interview them, you could have an application process, you could have whatever way that you thought would be better to decide how you're going to fill your vacancies. And the law doesn't really, as long as it's legal, you know, you can say, well, I want the tallest guy that I can find to be on the council, right? You know, that wouldn't be legal. But, you know, you could say, well, you know, we're only going to appoint people that, you know, have some experience in local government. That would be okay. You couldn't say, well, I don't want anybody over the age of this. So that probably could get challenged, and you'd probably get held up. So anyway, moving on to page number 6. Right now, there are some provisions for removal of council members that are enshrined in the law. Typically, what I've seen is people that miss meetings. So if you miss 3 consecutive regular meetings, you forfeit your office. There are some provisions in there. If the council member, I think you can actually still do it. You decide you want to run for another office. I don't believe city councils are covered by the resign to run provisions. But there's things like that you can read, and most of them are never used. Right now, and if you follow, it says they can remove for incompetency, corruption, misconduct, or malfeasance in office, and it goes to a court. Now, municipal officers on page 7, those are your administrator, your secretary, treasurer, attorney, marshal, engineer. There's a provision that basically lack of confidence, you know, that the council has to vote for. Somebody goes out and gets arrested, they don't necessarily forfeit their office, but upon conviction, you probably can get them out. And there are other things that are, some of them, if you read them, they're antiquated to the point where they're almost humorous, like, you know, drunkenness. You know, if you could get rid of the, you know, I mean, that supposedly if you do that even one time, I guess somebody could remove you. I've never seen it done. But, there are plenty of police chiefs that have gotten DWIs and have lost their jobs, because of that, or done something they shouldn't have been doing, usually in smaller communities, although it happens in big ones too. Anyway, moving on to page 9. The home rule process is actually set up under the Constitution. The city must have a population of 5,000 or more to become a home rule city. Citizens must vote to become a home rule city by voting for a charter. And the third one, city may determine its own population if its census does not exceed 5,000. That's what we have done here. And the city, back when we passed, I believe it was in 2015 or 16, the TCEQ came down and said, you've got X number of water connections, there's X number of people presumed under law to be residing there based on this number of connections, and therefore you have to step up your testing. And so, using that formula, perfectly legal, the cities actually, the state courts have said it can determine their own population. We know, for example, that censuses don't necessarily count everybody. We know that historically there's been undercounts. The city does not have an official decennial census that exceeds 5,000, but we can establish that we do by other means. So what does that mean? Does that mean you got 5,000 people that live here, or you got 5,000 people in the city? It doesn't say that. Your population, well, who's your population? So these oil field guys that come here and sit in the hotels, 5 nights out of the 7 nights, well, they're part of your population. They don't vote here. I guess they could. I've seen people do that. So it is something that that we believe that we can do based on that mechanism of determining population, and certainly under the regulatory scheme of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, the city can't say, well, our sign says we only have 3,000 people, and they'll say, well, we don't care. You've got this number of connections, you've got X number of people living here within the city. So I know that was something that has been discussed, and we actually believe that there are more than 5,000 people here. Are they always here? I don't know, but we know that we have that population based on the number of, and I believe it's municipal water connections, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so page number 10. Process for adoption of a charter. You must first select a charter commission. So the city council can't say, this is a charter, we want it voted on. Got to have a commission. That's why y'all are here. City council may appoint the commission, and I cite the section of the local government code there. And so the commission prepares a charter for submission to the city council in a general election, yes or no. There's no, well, we like these 9 sections, but we don't want this one. You either take the whole document or you reject the whole document. And so that's the way that the ballot proposition will be made. When we submit something to the council, and if the council decides to order an election, there will be a ballot proposition that will be along with who are you voting for this May of 2023. And you can actually have the election on both issues. So you're actually electing individuals and approving a charter at the same time. So on page 11, it talks about the charter commission duties. You have to decide the form of government. Any form of government that currently exists that's allowable under the local government code, chapters 9 and 26 can be done. Powers of the city. What can the city do? Typically power of taxation, eminent domain, power to create departments, police powers, police, fire, utilities, franchises, all of that stuff. It's all going to be contained in their council terms. You can have 2-year terms, 3-year terms. You can have term limits. I think those have fallen out of favor. I think that term limits were something that was a way to supposedly rid the city of career politicians. I don't think that works the way it was intended. I think there's a lot of unintended consequences with that, because you can look here in the room tonight, and we have a couple of council members here, one who's been on the council a very long time, off and on, and one who hasn't, and it takes a while for you to learn what you're doing. So if you got a 2-year limit and you can only serve 2-year terms, right about the time you may be starting to be a pretty good councilman, well, you're gone. A lot of them say, well, you can only have 2 consecutive terms and then you got to lay out one. And you can have them, but I think they have fallen upon disfavor. If you ask your administration, they'll say, don't do it. Because it's a lot easier to run a city when you have a experienced council that knows what they're doing and can work, as the city of Cotulla has done for years, very efficiently. You can see the progress that has occurred in the city. You're sitting in a location that, but for a council that was forward-looking and willing to invest in the city, you would not have this facility here. This convention center had fallen into a terrible state of disrepair. And it was the city council that took the initiative, that went out and borrowed the money. I was several $1 million to rehab the place, and now look what you have. So if you get people that come into office potentially, and I've dealt with elected officials for years. Some are real good, and some it takes them a while, and some probably should have never been elected. But they are the people that you have. If you think that you're going to rid yourself of career politicians, look, you don't pay your council members anything here. In most cities, if they do pay them, they pay them hardly anything, $100 a meeting or something, some very minimal amount. Even in the city of San Antonio, they don't get paid very much. And that's really a full-time job. They meet every week. They're running a bunch of other things. You can actually pay your councilman. The charter that we propose does not do it. There are cities that do it. None around here that I'm aware of. I think Savnell, they paid them a little something. Some of them, they give them a credit on their water bill. I mean, I've seen all of the number of ways that they do compensate them. But most people that serve the city do it for the privilege and the honor of serving the community. And maybe they want to run for another office at some point, right? It's a good way to get your feet wet. You're on the council, then you run for something else later. Most of the people I've dealt with here have stayed here in the community. In fact, all of them that I know of. Some have gone on to serve on the county court, but most have stayed right here with the city. Many of them for many, many years. Getting down further, the powers of the council. Okay, important rule. So, modern cities typically have a trained professional that runs the city, a city manager or city administrator. So you don't have the city council voting on what flavor of cake you're going to have at the Christmas party. You've got somebody who's in charge of that, who sets up the departments, who's held accountable to the council, who has to perform, or they're sent on their way. Now, the charter that I proposed would have a city manager, which is what everybody does now, and that manager, my recommendation is that they be given a contract. Now, no other city employee gets a contract, okay? There's a lot of benefits to having a contract for your city manager. One, it helps with continuity. No professional city manager is going to want to come into a place where they know at the next election, the guy whose kid they didn't start on the Little League team who ran against somebody else and wants to come in and get him fired. And there's usually severance provisions. There's provisions in there on other things that the city will pay for, cell phones, car allowances, things of that sort. The old days, they didn't do it, And so what you ended up with was a manager who was constantly having to please a different group of people, or maybe working for people who wanted his job, and those kinds of things need to be avoided if you're going to put the interests of the citizens ahead of other people's interests. So I know that it's the standard. If you go to Laredo, you go to San Antonio, they all got a contract. And if they send them packing, they give them some money and they're on their way. It also makes it easier for the city to change leadership if they believe that needs to be done. The parameters of what you are obligated to do if you decide to do that. And I think it avoids a lot of unnecessary rancor and discord. And a city manager has about a 5-year, they're like school superintendents, 3 to 5 years. It's just too hard of a job. No matter what you do, somebody's not going to like it. And, if you get one longer than that, you're doing real well. And it is a tough job. It's not for the feeble of heart, because it is a very difficult job. So those are things that you don't want or maybe you do want your council deciding what kind of ice cream to have at the Christmas party. I don't know. I mean, you can create a charter that allows him to do that. The way the city has operated right now, the council basically reports to the city. The city manager reports to the council, and that makes it easier. We have a part-time council. Most of them are working. As far as I know, all of them are working. They don't have time to be down there at City Hall, buying coffee for the break room or things of that sort. You need professionals, and Cotulla has moved a long way towards getting there, and we have been very fortunate to have had a long continuity of good leadership for many years. The powers of the mayor. The mayor under a type A is your budget officer. He or she actually prepares your budget. Now, does he actually go prepare it? No, the finance guy does. But it's the mayor's budget, right? So he's the executive, and he presents that to the council. The council has hearings. It goes through the give and forth, the workshops, decides what priorities they're going to have this year. Are they going to replace equipment? Are they going to, all of the stuff that a business does. And getting back to that reference to the city as a corporation, it is a corporation, but its shareholders are the public, and the public gets to vote. If they don't like what the corporation's doing, they get rid of them. And that happens in many, many places. We just saw that Tuesday night on a national level. People don't like your governor, your government, you get to vote. And that's what makes us very unique, uniquely American, is that ability to interact in the voting booth. So if you get to page 12, some ideas. How do you remove council members? How do you fill vacancies? How many council members do you want? You want the mayor voting? What are the duties of the city manager? Can the council investigate? Some have ethics commissions, some have other different things. I think that's not really necessary in the city of Cotulla, but they have them in larger cities. Annexation, elections, who's the budget officer? Charter Commission considerations, referendum, initiatives. Those are things that are brought to you by the public. You know, somebody wants something on the agenda and the council doesn't want to do it. If they get enough signatures, they get to do it. Recall, basically the charter that I have given you to look at, and it's just a draft, does not have that. I got to talk to two of y'all earlier about why I didn't think you needed it. But you can certainly have it, you know, and you may submit something to the voters in May if we get there, and they may say, you know, no, we're not going to approve it unless you put that in there, you know. And it's not unusual for a charter not to pass the first time around. You may have to go back to the drawing board more than once. Commissions, you have your Planning and Zoning Commission. You have your Board of Adjustment. You also can have a Building and Standards Commission. You can have whatever kind of commissions you want, as long as there's a not something that says you can't have it in the city. Budget process, you know, what's your fiscal year? Most cities, it's October 1 to September 30th. The city of Cotulla didn't have that when I got here. For some odd reason, it was different. We've changed that because every other agency that I'm aware of operates on that fiscal year, because your tax bills go out on October 1. So that's really, I think, the driving reason, because the tax rates get set in September. So cities that do it in August, well, it doesn't go out for another month or so. And I'm not sure why that was. Maybe that was the old law. Maybe taxing authorities used to send their bills out in September. I don't know. Removal of officers, creation of city departments, civil service. Not something that you need here. That's typically police and fire, which we don't have either one of. Conflicts of interest. We do have some stuff in our ordinances that are there. You've got chapters in the local government code that prohibit certain things. Page 14, which is kind of something that really kind of goes to the heart of it. You know, once you finalize what you think you want to give to the council, the commission votes. Council says yes or no. Election has to be held on a uniform election date. All elections have to be held on uniform election dates now. You have to give every registered voter must be mailed a copy of the proposed charter 30 days for the election. Typically, you'll put a pamphlet together, send it out. State law, we'll skip that part. The vote on the charter, if the charter is adopted, it may only be amended by vote. And then I'm actually quoting here the law. The charter prepared by the Charter Commission shall be submitted to the qualified voters at an election to be held on the first authorized uniform election date. So if you approved it in January, you have to have your vote in May. You can't say, well, we're going to vote in 2024. No, it has to go to the voters as soon as they approve it. And it allows you sufficient time, that allows you sufficient time to comply with the other requirements of the law, and that occurs on or after the 40th day after the date the Charter Commission completes its work. So I did a little work here and said the next election's May 6th. The council wants it to be on the agenda, to be on the ballot. And the last date for voting, for ordering an election, is February 17th, 2023. So we would have to have it approved by the council by the 9th, which is their regular meeting in February. But you could do it sooner than that. So those are considerations that that you all need to keep in mind. The next steps, you develop a draft charter, invite public and community leaders to provide input. You approve it. Council may approve the charter, doesn't have to. Voters must receive a copy. Election is held to approve or reject the charter. Your role is to act as the public's representative. We can't have a 100-member commission. You wouldn't find 100 people in Cotulla to do it. So, you take a representative of people that you think are a broad spectrum of people that live in the community, people who have an interest in serving their city. Council, approves or rejects it. Council can't give you can't say, well, nice try, guys, but here's the one we want you to approve. That can't be done. Some of this is a bit redundant. If the charter is submitted by the commission is rejected, the commission may go back and draft a revised charter. Now, the ordinance creating the resolution creating the charter commission didn't have a limit on how long y'all were going to be together, but the council can dissolve you at the next meeting if it wanted to. So this is something that is totally up to the control of the council, even though you guys are your own group. So city council can come here and say, hey, we want this, we want that. Fine. You can ignore them, or you can do what you think you need to do, or you can do what they say. Why do we have a charter commission? State law creates an independent commission with more than advisory powers, tasked with drafting a proposed charter and presenting it to the city council for approval or rejection. Now, the council approves it. That doesn't mean it goes into effect. It's got to be voted on, right? All the council is saying is this is the one we want to go to the voters. The commissioners can discuss the matter with the public. Meetings are open. Public input should be solicited. The council, by selecting you, has entrusted you as commissioners to represent the public interest. And the commission is selected to bring unique perspectives, knowledge, and experience and represent the interests of the general public, but the final decision is the voters. So that was a long way and long-winded presentation on you guys put something together. I'm here to help you. I'm here to answer your questions. City staff will be here as needed. If you want to see the audits for the last 20 years and want to go through them at a meeting, I guess you could do it. There's nothing limiting what you guys can do.
How often are we expected to meet?
Once a month.
Once a month is all?
We can meet more, but we can meet more than the way the resolution
I don't see any way
is.
to do it once a month and get it finished by January.
Well, the way the resolution is written, it's 5 o'clock on the meeting day, the regular meeting of the council. Now, you guys want to meet sooner than that? We can have a meeting next week if you want to. And I think what we need to do is get everybody in here and make sure we've got our 7, who are going to be on the commission. So we're here. I've got my phone number, my email. If you've got questions, call me.
Are there any hearings, public hearings on this?
We can have them. We should have them. And we can do them both during the charter meetings. We didn't do it tonight, but we can have them during the council meeting as well. You can even have a joint meeting with the council if you want to, and we just post a notice and council can be there and you all can have a discussion about it. What I've seen done is typically they operate on their own. You all want to put a schedule together and talk to Bianca and let her know when you guys want to meet. We can have as many meetings as you want.
Oh, I kind of agree with him. First, we got to get everyone else. Then, yeah.
Well, we know who
At least
they
twice a
are,
month.
so we're going to give them the same documents that you have. And, I think, when you go home, take a look at this, it's possible we don't get it done. It's possible that you keep the commission together and you vote in the fall. Or maybe, it depends. The law says that it has to be held at the next date that allows you to do all the other things you have to do. So, if we can't get it done by the meeting in the end of January, early February, then we need to think about how we want to do this. And those are all policy considerations that the city council needs to make. I know it's a bit rushed, but it's the way that it worked out. I mean, we do have some time. You do have the ability to review what you have there. Because you are a commission, you can't have meetings except by posting an agenda. You can't have your own private meeting to discuss it. So, but you can certainly work on things your own, think about what you want to do. Are there any questions or any?
Do we want to contact the other members and then possibly schedule another meeting so we can, I guess, start working on this?
We'll let Bianca do that. Maybe for tonight, you all can pick one of you to kind of take the lead on that. I'm thinking E.T.'s going to probably be the chair.
I was going to volunteer Noe. Noe's got a good place right down there at Keck. Everybody can walk up and talk to him.
Okay. Whatever you guys
Get
want.
the word out.
I'll make contact with Bianca and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. And, do I need to be at every meeting? I certainly will be there if you want me there. I think you have a pretty good idea what you need to be doing. A lot of times the city manager will be there at those meetings. At least on the meetings that we're supposed to have, I will be there. Which are the monthly meetings. But we can have more than one meeting a month. We can have a meeting every week if you want. And again, that does become burdensome for some people.
Y'all will try to have one in 2 weeks
I'll say, I think at least
Yeah.
every
to
other
get
week.
all of us together
Everyone.
for the first time.
I think we really need to understand it a little bit better. And I think it's going to take time for us to really digest the information. So once we do that, then once we start meeting, there's a possibility we might be able to put it.
Well, I have probably the preeminent paper that was written on the subject, and I will leave it here with Bianca, and she can reproduce it. It's long, and a lot of it doesn't necessarily deal exclusively with Texas, because the one thing about municipal law is while we are uniquely interested in what Texas does, municipal law is kind of municipal law. You go to New York, Syracuse, New York, and they're kind of running the meeting the same way we do it here. That is almost it's almost universal the way they do it. Larry went to the School of Management or Harvard Leadership School, so he has more of that perspective. The municipal law, the fundamentals of it are kind of all the same. How you set it up with what you call your city secretary is going to vary from place to place. Like, I know in some states they call the attorney the solicitor, or whatever, but it's still the same function. So it is somewhat uniform, although there are things that are peculiar to Texas, particularly our tax code. So we have limitations here in the state of Texas on how much you can increase taxes at one time. There's rollback provisions. A lot of states have a lot of that same stuff. The local taxation here is really kind of dictated by the state legislature, who will be meeting here in January to pass some new laws that we don't know about, but they won't go into effect until September of 2023. So nothing that they do right now typically is going to make any difference in what we do. But they're always after cities. They feel sometimes some cities get too big for their britches, and they try to roll them in. And it's not Cotulla. It's San Antonio, Houston, Laredo, Austin in particular. That they just do things. There's this constant fighting.
Can we talk to each other one-on-one without it being
Yes.
a meeting?
Well, yes, you can talk, but you're not supposed to talk about city business.
We can't
So
make any decisions.
you can't say, well, the quorum's 3, so I'm going to meet for 2. No, you can't do that.
Step one, I just want to make sure that everyone on that list is on board and we have the 7 we need. And in 2 weeks, we'll know that answer. I think that's our first big step.
In 2 days, we need to know that
Yeah,
answer.
that's what I mean.
Thanksgiving?
2 weeks from now is Thanksgiving, so.
How about 1 week?
1 week.
Well,
Yeah, let's make sure everyone on the list, because I know Patel apparently was not interested after all, and we just found that out tonight. So let's make sure we have our 7, and if not, find who can fill in the spots.
See, I think Pablo would be good, but
I
I
think
don't
he
know if
would
he
be
wants
good,
to
but we
do
don't
it. He
know.
used to be the mayor.
Let's get our names set up so we have a full group to meet.
For next week.
Yeah.
In our case, what constitutes a quorum?
Apparently
Five,
3.
It's 3.
3.
Okay.
And you can't say, well, we're going to meet with 2 of them. That's not legal either. That's avoiding a quorum, which is not something you want to do.
Okay.
But you can talk to Bianca all you want, or you can call me, or call Larry.
You can call me.
You drop by City Hall, and when Larry's in Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and
I'll see you at the
I'm very
presentation.
familiar with charters, and the charter in Laredo gets updated every 3 or 4 years. They have all sorts of discussions. We've not addressed some of the issues that are beneficial with the charter, but if you follow the example of your neighbor Pearsall, they were able to add significantly to their tax rolls by the threat of annexation of the power plant. And so whatever their base was, they were able to add 400 million directly into it from 1 year to the next. You have the same advantage because the legislature has curtailed the annexation, and you currently have a 1 mile extension. But if you go to charter, your actual ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction, goes to 6 miles. And so that presents a threat to the Anadarkos of the world, that the Tanger, whatever is out there, and they are willing to do something called a payment in lieu of taxes. And so you get a contract with them and you negotiate, I won't annex you for 10 years, but you gotta pay me so much money every year, and I'm gonna use it to pave the streets, or I'm gonna use it to build parks. So that means that you shift the burden of the taxation from the local community to the manufacturer, to the plant. If, as an example, the city of Corpus Christi, you go into Corpus Christi on 37, and all the things on the right are not annexed. It's not in Corpus Christi. They all pay payments in lieu of taxes in order to keep that city going. Many of the structures that are in and around the ship channel are not in the city limits. And so the ways the city itself sustains itself and doesn't tax the community is by doing that. And that's one of the advantages.
And we need to look at that, because if any of you were watching the the news on Tuesday covering the elections, you see all this red and then the blue right down the middle. That's why the legislature is always after the cities, because that's where the blue voters live. You know, they're always fighting with them. And typically it's very hard now to annex if people live there, right? Well, these places that these industrial, nobody lives there. So you don't pay taxes because you work at the refinery, right? You pay taxes if you live at your home on Leona Street, like Ty does, you know. So they're constantly reining in the big cities. They don't like them. Dan Patrick, Abbott, they don't care for San Antonio and Houston and San Antonio because they don't vote for them, you know. So expect in this legislature that there may be more things. They don't like involuntary annexations. We're going to take you into the city whether you want it or not. And they used to be able to do that. You know, and your ETJ is determined by your population. So, you know, in fact, when we come back next week, I will give you a better presentation on annexation and what I think the current status of the law is. But I know we had a meeting a few years ago, Jeff, Snowden, Larry,
Martin.
Roy Martin Jr. And they basically, you know, they weren't going to do anything. They're perfectly willing to take what they can out of the community and not give anything back to you unless you can force them to do it.
But at the same time, you've got to realize that they're feeding off of you. The workers all live in the city. They use all your services. They pay nothing. And they continue to take advantage of you the whole time that they're sitting out there in the boonies because you can't do anything about it.
To the city, right. You know, the people, now they do pay school taxes and county taxes, but you know, ideally you want a community. They're not here because they wanted to set up there. They're here because it's close to Cotulla, so they can get the services. You know, they're not out in Fowlerton. You know, they're over here. They could put their thing in Fowlerton if they wanted to. Why did they come here? Water, roads, hotels. That's not an accident. The Gardendale Industrial Park. I don't know if there's anything we can do with them. But they're there for a reason. Because it's a good location. 5-6 miles from Cotulla. You've got people here in Cotulla now. Unlike when I was in school here, you can graduate and get a real good paying job down here now. There were no jobs here unless you wanted to work on a ranch somewhere. You know, now we actually have the ability for the youngest people in this community, your most precious resource, to stay in this community to make it better. Instead of packing their bags, going to College Station and never coming back, or going to Austin or whatever. That's what they did.
We're ready to go. I think we can close this meeting.
All right.
Adjourn.
Well, we will adjourn.
I think we have to switch out anyway.